The Alien Challenge. The cage door opened with a loud metallic sound. Inside, the human sat on the cold floor, his hands resting calmly on his knees. His name was Daniel, and he had been captured 3 days ago. Bruises covered his arms, but his eyes still held fire. Outside the cage, a group of aliens watched with amusement. They belonged to the Threxian species, tall, proud, and known for their strength in battle. Among them stood Zirith, daughter of the war chief and the most feared warrior among her people. Zirith stepped forward, her silver armor shining under the twin suns. Her violet eyes locked onto Daniel's calm expression. She tilted her head, curious and annoyed. "You don't look so dangerous," she said. "Why does everyone speak of humans like they're beasts?" Daniel said nothing. He just stared. At her, Zirith grinned. She liked games and she loved breaking strong ones. "You've been quiet too long, human. Let's see what you're hiding." She opened the cage herself, ignoring the warnings of her guards. "Zirith, don't go inside. He might be planning something," one alien whispered, but she waved them off. "He's just a man." The others laughed. Zirith entered the cage, standing tall above Daniel. She walked in slow circles around him. He didn't move. Her boots echoed on the metal floor. "Are all humans this boring, or just you?" She poked his shoulder. Still no response. "Speak or I'll make you," she said, bending closer. Daniel finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "You don't want to make me." Zirith's smile widened. "Oh? Is that a threat?" She leaned in and touched his face, brushing his jaw with her fingers. "I thought humans were soft," she said. "I guess you do have a little steel." Daniel didn't blink. Then she grabbed his hair and lifted his face toward hers. "Come, and show me what makes you special," she whispered. But Daniel didn't flinch. Zirith was used to fear. She was used to screams. But this man gave her nothing, just a calm, cold stare. It made her feel strange. "You think you're above me?" she hissed. She shoved him back, expecting him to fall. But he caught himself easily, still quiet, still calm. The crowd outside laughed and shouted insults. "Make him beg. He's just a weak animal." Zirith was getting frustrated now. She didn't like being ignored. She didn't like feeling confused. So she decided to humiliate him. She pointed to the ground. "Kneel." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Why?" he asked. "Because I said so." "Then make me." There was silence. Zirith's smile disappeared. The challenge in his voice was real. For the first time, someone dared to talk to her like that. She stepped closer again, faster this time. Her hand moved to force him down, but suddenly, he caught her wrist. Not with anger, not with fear, just pure control. And then, he bit her. His teeth sank just deep enough into her wrist to leave a mark, not to injure, but to dominate. Zirith gasped and jumped back, clutching her arm. Her people shouted in shock. "He bit her!" "Is he crazy?" Zirith stared at Daniel. Her heart was pounding, not from pain, from something else, something she didn't understand. She had never been touched like that, never been challenged like that, never been marked. Daniel stood up slowly. He was shorter than her, thinner, weaker by alien standards. But at that moment, everyone saw something else, power, real power. He didn't run. He didn't cower. He simply stared at her and said, "Don't poke the beast unless you're ready to be bitten." Zirith said nothing. Her eyes were locked on his, and deep inside, something ancient, something primal, awakened. Zirith sat, alone in the training hall that night, her wrist still aching from the bite. The mark was small, but it burned like fire. Not because of pain, but because of what it meant. No one had ever dared to touch her. No one had ever stood against her. But that human, Daniel, had done it without fear. She looked at her reflection in the polished blade of her sword. She wasn't afraid of him. Of course not. She was a Threxian warrior, daughter of the war chief. but something about Daniel made her feel unsettled. He's only a human, she muttered to herself. Just a human. But deep inside, she wasn't sure anymore. The next morning, the tribe gathered in the arena. The elders wanted to test the human. Some thought he was dangerous. Others wanted him killed. But Zareth? She wanted answers. She stood at the center of the circle as the gates opened again. Daniel stepped into the arena, his hands unchained. 2 guards walked behind him, but he didn't need force. He walked on his own, head held high. His eyes found Zareth immediately. Calm, cold, controlled. The crowd whispered. That's the one who bit her. She should have killed him on the spot. Zareth ignored them. She raised a hand and the noise stopped. You bit me, she said. Daniel gave a small nod. You asked for it. The crowd gasped again. Zareth felt heat in her chest, but she wasn't angry. Not fully. Not anymore. Today, she said loudly, you will prove your strength. 1 trial. No weapons. No tricks. Daniel's voice didn't rise. And if I refuse? Zareth's tone turned sharp. Then you die. He smirked. That's what I thought. The ground shook as the arena gates opened again. From the dark tunnel, a beast stepped out. 12 feet tall, armored skin, claws like knives. It roared, shaking the walls. The tribe cheered. Daniel didn't flinch. Zareth shouted from the side. Defeat the beast, and you walk free. The beast lunged. Daniel ran, not away but toward the creature. He dove under its claws, rolled and grabbed a sharp stone from the ground. He jabbed it into the beast's eye. The monster roared in pain and swiped wildly. The crowd stood on their feet. Daniel ducked again, climbed the beast's back and slammed the rock again and again into the beast's skull until it collapsed. Silence. Then the arena erupted in noise. He killed it. He's not just strong, he's smart. Zareth couldn't believe her eyes. The human was breathing hard, covered in blood, but still standing. She had seen elite warriors fall to that beast. But he made it look like instinct. Later that evening, Zareth found him sitting by the fire near the slave tents. He was washing blood from his arms with a cloth. She approached slowly. Why didn't you run? She asked. Daniel didn't look at her. Running solves nothing. You should have died. Maybe, but you would have lost something rare. Zareth frowned. And what's that? He finally looked up. Someone who doesn't fear you. That struck deep. Her whole life, people had bowed, begged, and obeyed. Even the strongest warriors avoided her temper. But Daniel? He didn't care who she was. You crossed the line when you touched me, he said quietly. Respect is earned, not forced. Zareth sat down beside him, something she had never done with any prisoner. You think I don't deserve respect? I think you rely too much on fear. She didn't argue, because he was right. She watched the flames for a moment, then asked, Why did you bite me? Daniel smiled slightly. Because talking didn't work, and you needed a reminder, humans aren't toys. Zareth laughed, a soft sound no one had ever heard from her before. Not cruel, not mocking, just real. You're lucky I didn't kill you. You're lucky I didn't bite harder. They both smiled. But deep inside, something strange was happening. Zareth had never felt drawn to anyone before, never admired anyone, never been challenged in this way. She looked at the bite mark again. It wasn't a wound anymore, it was a symbol, and it was changing her. That night, Zareth couldn't sleep. She lay in her chamber, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Around her, trophies of past victories filled the walls. Beast horns, enemy blades, medals of honor. They meant everything to her once, but now, her mind kept going back to the bite. She touched her wrist again. The mark was healing fast, but it still pulsed, almost like it was alive. Not painful, but hot, like her body remembered the moment over and over. Why didn't I stop him? She could have. She was stronger, faster. She could have broken his jaw with one punch, but she didn't, and she still couldn't understand why. Far across the camp, Daniel was locked back in his cage, but he didn't sleep either. He sat quietly, staring at the stars through the bars above. For the first time since his capture, he didn't feel like a prisoner. Something had shifted. He wasn't being laughed at anymore. Warriors passed by his cage with quiet glances. Some looked at him with respect, a few with fear. He knew why. The bite wasn't just an act of rebellion. It was a message, to Xerath, to the tribe, to everyone watching. Humans weren't weak. The next morning, Xerath woke early. She avoided the war hall, avoided the practice grounds. For the first time in her life, she didn't want anyone to see her. Her people expected strength, rage, control. But she didn't feel any of that. She felt confused. Why do I keep thinking about him? He's just a human. She walked to the medical chamber and quietly scanned her wrist. The healer, an old alien with a single glowing eye, noticed her. "Strange mark," he said. "What creature gave you that?" Xerath hesitated. "A human." The healer blinked, then grinned. "Ah, a mating mark." Xerath's head snapped up. "What? Did he bite you in challenge without fear?" "Yes." The old healer chuckled. "Then be careful, child. The body remembers what the mind cannot accept. That bite means more than you think." Xerath left without another word, but her heartbeat was louder now. Later that day, she walked to Daniel's cage. He looked up as she approached. No fear, just the same calm eyes. "Come with me," she said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "You're not a prisoner today. You're my guest." She took him to the high cliffs outside the camp, a place few ever went. The wind was strong there, the sky wide and endless. They stood side by side in silence. Xerath finally spoke. "Do you know what your bite did?" Daniel shrugged. "Proved a point." "It did more than that." She told him about the healers, words, about how her species had ancient instincts, about how a dominant bite wasn't just a challenge, it was a claim. "It's old biology," she said. "We evolved past it. Or so we thought." Daniel stayed quiet. Then he said, "And what does it mean now?" Xerath didn't look at him. "It means I haven't stopped thinking about it." The silence grew heavy. "You're not like others," she said finally. "You don't kneel. You don't beg. You don't need armor or weapons to make others listen." Daniel looked out at the sky. "Strength isn't about hurting people. It's about knowing when not to." She turned to him, studying his face. "Would you bite me again?" she asked softly. Daniel didn't smile. "Only if you forget who I am." The wind blew through her silver hair. Xerath had fought beasts, burned cities, and stood against armies. But right now, a single human made her feel more uncertain than all of that. Not because he was dangerous, because he was real, and no one had ever been real with her before. She touched her wrist again. The bite didn't break me. It woke me up. Back at the camp, rumors spread fast. Some said Xerath had been claimed by the human. Others said she was planning to kill him in private. But the truth was stranger than any rumor. For the first time, the war princess of Threx didn't want to win a battle. She just wanted to understand him. And deep inside, she feared something more powerful than any enemy. She didn't want to lose him. Xerath was no longer the same. Everyone in the Threxian tribe noticed it. Her silence, her missing rage, the way her eyes wandered toward the human cage more often than before. She no longer shouted during training. She didn't challenge warriors to spar. She skipped council meetings. Her fire had cooled, but not died. It had changed, and the mark on her wrist hadn't faded. Inside his cage, Daniel sat as always, calm, quiet, unmoved by the chaos outside. But his eyes always noticed. He saw the way other warriors now avoided looking him in the eye. He saw how the guards became gentler. And he noticed something else. Zirith was watching him, not like before. No more arrogance or mocking smirks. Now it was something deeper, curious, conflicted. She came to him without her armor one morning. No sword, no guards, just her. "Walk. With me," she said. Daniel stood slowly. "You trust me now?" She didn't answer directly. "Just walk." They walked past the village, across the red sand hills, where the wind whispered and no one could hear them. Zirith finally spoke. "They think I'm weak." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Because of me?" She nodded slowly. "They say I've been claimed." Daniel chuckled. "And what do you say?" Zirith looked at the horizon. "I don't know anymore." Back at the camp, whispers grew louder. The war priestess spoke to the elders. "She has lost her focus. The human has clouded her mind." The council argued. Some wanted Daniel executed. Others wanted him studied, maybe even used as a weapon. But one thing was clear. The tribe didn't like change, and Zirith was changing fast. That night she returned to Daniel's cage again, but this time she brought food. Not the dry rations prisoners got. Real food, spiced meat, sweet fruits, tribal wine. Daniel looked at the tray, then at her. "I'm not a pet." Zirith sat across from him on the sand. "And I'm not feeding. You like one?" She didn't speak for a while, just watched him eat. Finally she asked, "Do all humans act like you?" Daniel shook his head. "No. Most aren't brought to alien war camps and bitten by princesses." Zirith smirked. "That's fair." Then her face turned serious. "You really weren't afraid, were you?" Daniel looked into her eyes. "I've faced worse than you." Zirith's heart beat faster. "What's worse than me?" "Being truly alone." The words hit her harder than she expected. She had hundreds of warriors, a powerful father, a respected name, but she felt more alone than Daniel ever looked. Later, that evening, Zirith walked through the camp, but her head was somewhere else. The warriors stared. Some bowed their heads, others glared. Her closest friend, Ruka, stopped her. "Zirith, you're slipping. The council is watching you." "Let them. You brought food to a prisoner. You sit with him. You defend him. What's happening to you?" Zirith didn't answer. Ruka stepped closer. "Did he poison your mind?" Zirith looked at her, firm and cold now. "No, he woke it up." The next day, Daniel was moved out of the cage, not to freedom, but to a guest tent. No chains, no bars. It shocked everyone. Zirith declared it herself before the council. "If you think I am weak, challenge me. If not, stay out of my way." No one stood up, but the tension was heavy. Later that night, Daniel sat outside his new tent, staring at the stars again. Zirith joined him. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then finally, she whispered, "The bite. It didn't just mark me. It changed something inside me. I can't explain it, but I feel different. I don't want to fight every day. I don't want to rule with fear." Daniel looked at her. "Then don't. It's not that simple." "It is," he said quietly, "but it takes courage." Zirith turned to face him. "I've won 100 battles. Then try winning without your sword." The wind blew gently. The camp was silent, but their hearts weren't. Zirith closed her eyes, still feeling the warmth of that old mark on her wrist. She was the strongest warrior of her tribe. But tonight, beside this human, she felt safe. And that was the strangest reaction of all. Zirith used to walk like thunder, loud, fierce, impossible to ignore. But now her steps were softer. Her eyes, once full of fire, often stared into the distance. And most strange of all, she smiled, not cruelly, not for show, just small, quiet smiles when she thought no one was looking. But people were looking, and they noticed. Inside the tribal training ground, Ruka sparred with 2 young warriors. But her eyes kept drifting toward Zirith, who stood at the edge, not joining the fight. It was unheard of. Zareth never missed a sparring match. Raka finally walked over and whispered, "You didn't train today." Zareth replied, "I wasn't in the mood." Raka raised an eyebrow. "Since when does mood control you?" Zareth stayed silent. By the evening meal, more whispers began. "She hasn't challenged anyone in days. She eats alone now, or worse, she eats near the human. Has she lost her edge?" Even the war chief, Zareth's father, noticed. His sharp eyes watched her from across the fire pit, saying nothing, but his jaw was tight. That night, Daniel sat by the flame outside his tent, slowly fixing a small wooden carving with a sharp rock. He didn't look up when Zareth approached. "What are you making?" she asked. "A bird," Daniel replied. "It doesn't look like one." Daniel smiled. "It will." She sat down beside him. "They're talking about us." Daniel shrugged. "They've been talking since I bit you." Zareth looked down at her wrist. She still touched it sometimes without realizing. "You started something I can't stop," she said quietly. "Good," Daniel replied. "Stopping isn't strength, but neither is losing control." Daniel turned toward her, calm as always. "You're not losing control, you're learning a new one." The next day, during a war council, one of the elder warriors slammed his fist on the table. "She's distracted. She hasn't led a raid in weeks. She walks around with him like he's her equal." The war chief didn't respond immediately. Then he looked at his daughter. "Zareth, do you deny it?" Zareth stood tall. "No." Gasps filled the room. "Then you are no longer fit to lead warriors," one elder growled. Zareth's voice didn't shake. "If strength is measured by ignoring wisdom, then perhaps you never led anything." The council fell silent, and for the first time, Zareth didn't wait for permission. She walked out. That night, Raka visited her tent. "You know what they're planning, don't you?" Zareth nodded. "A public challenge. They'll make you fight. Probably him." Zareth's jaw clenched. "Then I won't let them." "And what about your feelings for him?" Zareth turned sharply. "That's none of their concern." "It is if it costs you your title." Zareth looked at the candlelight, flickering across the canvas wall. Maybe power isn't the only thing worth keeping. The next morning, Zareth walked alone to Daniel's tent. He looked up from his carving again. "It's a bird now," he said proudly. She actually laughed, a full real laugh. "You know they might try to put you in the arena again. Let them. What if they make me your opponent?" Daniel met her eyes. "Then don't hold back." "And if I lose?" Daniel looked back down at the carving. "Then maybe you win something else." Her heart skipped a beat. Back at the center of the camp, a fire was lit high in the sky, the signal for a coming trial. The elders had made their move, a test of loyalty, a test of power, and everyone knew this wasn't about Daniel anymore. This was about Zareth's heart, and she could no longer hide it. The fire of trial burned tall in the center of the Threxian camp. War drums echoed across the valley. Warriors gathered in a wide circle. Elders stood behind the fire. The tribe waited, hungry for spectacle. Something was coming. Everyone could feel it. At the heart of the crowd stood Zareth, her armor shining under the moons. Her face was calm, but inside a storm raged. She already knew what this was. Not justice, not honor. It was a trap. And at the center of that trap was Daniel. He arrived quietly, walking alone from his tent. No chains, no guards. He wore no armor, only a simple cloak that moved with the wind. But somehow, he looked taller than anyone in the crowd. The drums stopped. Silence fell. The war chief stepped forward. "The time has come to test the one who shamed our blood. He will face our might and prove if his bite was strength, or just a lucky moment." Daniel didn't speak. He looked across the fire, straight at Zareth. She looked back, and in that glance, something passed between them. Something silent, but unbreakable. The elders pointed to the center. Choose your opponent, Zareth once said coldly, if you still serve this tribe. The message was clear. Fight the human, or be cast out. Zareth stepped forward, heart pounding. Her hand reached for her blade, but then she dropped it. Gasps echoed across the camp. No sword? Someone whispered. She's lost her mind, another said. But Zareth spoke clearly. I will face him bare-handed, just like he did the beast. Let this be fair. Daniel smiled faintly. You sure? He asked. Are you? The two stepped into the circle. For a long moment they just stood, watching each other. Daniel moved first, slowly, calmly. His hands open, his feet steady. Zareth charged. She was fast, strong. Her fists moved like lightning. She aimed a punch to his chest, but Daniel stepped aside, catching her wrist gently, spinning her around, not hitting her, redirecting her. Zareth growled. She attacked again, faster this time. Kicks, sweeps, punches. Daniel blocked each one, never striking back. The crowd grew restless. Why doesn't he fight? Is he afraid? But Zareth knew the truth. He wasn't afraid. He was choosing not to hurt her. That was his strength. She stopped, breathing hard, sweat rolling down her face. Daniel stood across from her, untouched, calm. His chest rose slowly. He looked at her with something deeper than defiance, compassion. You don't want to fight me, he said softly. Zareth's voice cracked. And you don't want to win. I already did, the war chief shouted from the edge. Enough, ended Zareth. She turned toward her father. Her voice didn't shake. I won't hurt him, because he did what none of us could. What are you talking about? He fought without rage. He bit me not with hate but with clarity. He faced monsters, pain and disrespect, and never became like us. The crowd fell silent. Zareth looked at Daniel. He's stronger than any of us, not in body, but in soul. Daniel said nothing. He didn't need to. The war priestess stepped forward now. You broke tradition. You let him change you. Zareth nodded. Yes, he did. Then you are no longer Threxian. Zareth's eyes narrowed. If being Threxian means living without growth, and then maybe I never was. For a moment, no one moved. Then something unexpected happened. A small warrior in the crowd stepped forward. Then another. And another. They came without weapons, and stood behind Daniel, behind Zareth, not to fight them, but to stand with them. Daniel turned slowly. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply nodded to them. Then he looked up at the sky. He hadn't won a war. He had started a change, one that didn't need blood, just one bold bite, and the courage to stay calm when others roared. The fire had burned low. The trial was over, but no one moved. Zareth stood tall, her fists still clenched, but not in anger, in clarity. Beside her stood Daniel, his cloak fluttering in the evening wind. Behind them, a few brave warriors remained. The rest of the tribe stayed silent, unsure what to do. For the first time in generations, power had not come from the blade, but from restraint. The war chief stepped forward slowly, his expression unreadable. So this is your path, he said to his daughter. To kneel beside a human. Zareth looked at Daniel, then back at her father. No, she said. To stand beside him. The old chief frowned. You risk everything for him. Your title. Your future. Zareth's voice was steady. He gave me something more valuable than a title. Truth. He showed me what strength looks like without cruelty. Daniel still hadn't spoken. He stood like stone, observing everything. It was his way. Not loud, not proud, but undeniable. The war priestess hissed, "This is weakness in disguise." Daniel turned toward her, his eyes calm but sharp. If I were weak, I would have fought back. I would have hurt her. I would have become what you expected. He stepped forward. But I didn't. Because I come from a world that teaches something different. And what's that? Someone sneered from the crowd. That dominance isn't about control. It's about understanding. Power isn't just who hits harder, it's who walks away stronger. His words struck deep, because they were true. Zareth looked at the elders, then the entire tribe. You raised me to lead. But I never knew why I was leading. Until now. She stepped in front of Daniel, turned toward him, and slowly did something no one expected. She bowed, one knee down, head lowered, in front of the man who once sat in a cage. The crowd gasped. Threxian war princess had never bowed to anyone, especially not a human, but she spoke clearly. You bit me not to break me, but to wake me. And now, I give you my strength willingly. Daniel looked stunned for the first time. Zareth, I kneel not because I am less, but because you are worth standing for. Suddenly, movement rippled through the crowd. More warriors, young, old, even some guards, began to step forward. One by one, they knelt beside her. Some were silent. Some whispered, I saw what he did. He didn't fight like us, but he won. She changed. Because of him. The war chief watched it all unfold. And then he did something no one expected. He took off his ceremonial cape, folded it neatly, and placed it on the ground. Then let the old ways end here, he said softly. Let something new begin. That night the camp was quiet. The fire in the center still burned, but now it felt warm. Not like judgment, but like home. Daniel sat beside Zareth near the edge of the cliffs where stars shone brighter than anywhere else. She leaned on his shoulder, her armor gone, her voice soft. Do all humans change people like this? Daniel smiled faintly. No, just the really stubborn ones. She laughed gently. Then I'm glad I met one. They sat in silence, listening to the wind. The tribe would rebuild. Their rules would change. And somewhere in between war and peace, something like love had taken root. The next morning, Daniel stood near the gates of the camp ready to leave. He didn't plan to stay forever. That was never his place. But as he turned to go, he heard a voice behind him. Zareth. If you walk away now, I won't stop you. Daniel turned. But if you stay, I won't fight it anymore. He took a long breath, then said, I came here in chains. I leave as your equal. That's all I ever needed. Zareth stepped closer. Then stay is more than that. And with no more words, she kissed him, not like a warrior, not like a conqueror, but like someone finally at peace. And so, the tale of the human and the warrior princess became legend, not because he crushed enemies, not because she ruled galaxies, but because one bite changed an empire, and one calm soul changed a heart, forever.